what it comes down to is that the best player, arguably in league history, LeBron James, decided that
Whoa.
he was going to say something. I know. Ooh, that's the most controversial thing said in this interview.
One of two.
I'll throw one of three because I'm a Kareem guy, too.
I was about to say, I could see that, Dave. But yeah, anyway, keep going.
There's a lot of biases there. But
he's the man.
With LeBron, I mean, he was playing in Miami when Trayvon Martin is killed in 2012 in Sanford, Florida. So that hit the team very hard, especially when Zimmerman was not getting Trayvon's murderer, George Zimmerman, was not being arrested. Remember, there was that period where they weren't even arresting him. And so, this is a wild number, but, over 50 high schools in South Florida staged walkouts. Another story that gets memory hold about that time. One high school, they spelled out Trayvon's name on the football field with their bodies. But the Miami Heat knew about this because it was in all the local news. We're just not remembering it historically. And so LeBron said, we have to do something about this. So they all posed with hoodies in 2012, the entire team, because hoodies being the symbol of what got Trayvon killed. And that was really the first viral sports politics photo of the Twitter age. And I think that taught a lesson to LeBron that by using social media and his own avenues, he could fulfill his dream when he was a teenager of wanting to be a political athlete like Muhammad Ali. So LeBron, in turn, bends the league towards being more, for lack of a better term, progressive and more open to what its players have to say, because he also provides this force field for any other player that wants to be political. Because how can you come down on the last player on the bench if you're not going to come down on LeBron James?
It really is quite remarkable because he was said to be, the next generational talent from age 15 on, right? And was not coddled, but I mean, had this rarefied experience that only he could understand. It's basically an audience or a group of one, and that's got to be very disorienting. And I would imagine you start kind of smelling your own farts to some degree, and so that of course that's going to affect you. But he still had the perspective to put political activism at the forefront, and I remember being frustrated that by some of his political speech, but on the whole, it really is. It's pretty impressive to keep that mooring.
The LeBron story is a fascinating one because, and this is what makes athletes over the last 100 years, black athletes in particular, such a dangerous and volatile element in the workings of U.S. society and the daily functions of U.S. inequality, because a lot of them, like LeBron, come from extremely poor backgrounds. Michael Jordan came from a stable middle class home, and I think that's one of the reasons that affected his desire to not be political, because they were never part of the aspirations of his house. Collective action. But here's LeBron, single mom, very poor. Until people started to realize that he was going to be this talent, and then money, no question, was put in their pockets. But until he was 15, like knowing what hunger felt like, and that's something that really never left him. And it's why he's done the educational work. It's why he's done the voting work. It's why he's spoken out against police violence, and his willingness to put it on the line. I'll say it again. It bent a league in a direction that it was not otherwise in.
And then we can return back to the NFL, right, where there has been a shift. And I remember when George Floyd was murdered, and a group of players, including Mahomes, including my boy Odell, including a variety of other great superstars in the league, came out and rebuked the commissioner and basically said this is not enough, which was very different than how NFL athletes are taught to be. You are a soldier. This is a militaristic operation. The Bill Belichick is judge, jury, and executioner, although apparently behind the scenes he's a lot more player friendly than he puts out publicly. But I digress. Like it's a very it doesn't, it's not a fruitful environment for that kind of anti-authoritarian, we're going to use our own power, we're going to use our own platforms. And that was a huge shift in my view.
Yeah, just brief note, I did that book with Michael Bennett, former NFL player, and he played briefly with the Patriots, and he really liked playing for Belichick because he said
they all say that, yeah,
that he leaves you the hell alone if you do your job right. And far too many coaches, they want to know what's happening in your personal life. Basically they're treating 28-year-old men like children, and that really rankles a lot of players, a lot. Especially
and which players do they go after more? I can't figure that out. Right.
Yeah, because there is a racial dynamic to that about having this older, usually white coach treat you like you're something of less than an adult, and so they like Belichick because, like I said, he leaves you the hell alone as long as you do your work, which is really all you can ask for. Maybe not just in football, but in life. But I'm sorry, what was the question? I got caught in Belichick land.
I guess I was just talking about the 2020 rebuke by Mahomes.
Oh, yes.
Saquon Barkley, Odell. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mahomes, let's see what happens. But he's the closest thing to LeBron that you have in the National Football League. I think if Mahomes isn't in that video, and he wasn't just in the video, he was an organizer of the video. If Mahomes isn't in that video, every player in that video, including Odell, is at risk in terms of their NFL future.
Well, look at how they responded to Odell doing the Black Power fist in the Kaepernick era, right? I mean, distraction.
And then part of an absurdly lopsided trade that gets him off the Giants. I mean, just ridiculous. And it was done absolutely for political reasons, not because for playing reasons.
That's my team, Dave, right? So you're opening up some old wounds.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know did you ever hear the New York Giants 1987 rap video for when they were going to the Super Bowl? You should look that up on YouTube. It'll haunt you.
Does LT spit?
He doesn't appear. Too cool.
Oh, all right.
It's all your linemen with their own hip hop stylings.
Yikes.
The 80s. So fun. But you needed Mahomes in that video. He can cast the force field. He is the one player in the NFL who is absolutely indispensable at this moment. Hopefully he'll use that power because it like LeBron shows, it can make a big difference.
And lastly, I just don't want to leave without talking about the dynamic that mirrored the one we saw in college football of owners like Jerry Jones, who's also the general manager, which is rare, who prides himself on having relationships and building relationships with the players on the Dallas Cowboys, still, like for months and months, trying not to talk about the anthem. Oh, they can kneel, but not during the anthem. And only when Trump called them sons of bitches did all of the owners, they went down on and linked arms and they knelt with their players. But the protest element, what there was actually being talked about, completely washed away. All they cared about was that the president, who Jones donated money to, a lot of money, and many owners did, not John Mara, that he went after, their employees. That was essentially what it was, and they wanted to do something, and that really frustrated me.
Yeah, and fear that they would lose their employees. The NFL so much depends upon the acceptance by players of rules that are racist, that are anti-union, even though they're in a union, that are unfair, the fact that the contracts aren't guaranteed, the fact that NFL owners held back scientific information about concussions. So there was no informed consent for what players went through for decades. There are so many reasons for that we might see a players' revolt or even a players' league, like some offshoot. And so the importance of keeping players pacified became all-consuming after Colin Kaepernick started to raise a lot of people's eyebrows and saying, wait a minute, do we really need to accept things the way they are? Because Colin might have been talking about racial inequity and police violence, but once one player starts bucking the system, it raises the possibilities. The old expression, courage is contagious. It raises the possibilities and the horizons of everybody else in the league. And not just there, but in all of sports. If you want to talk about why the rules in college athletics have loosened up over the last year, or why the Washington football team felt like it had to change its name after decades of defiance and clinging to the racism of its moniker, it all dates through Colin Kaepernick taking that knee.
Yeah. And I hope for a variety of things where players in the NFL, seize their power. And one of them is, the CBA has already been agreed upon, but eventually contracts that aren't so exploitative, because people don't realize they only focus on the stars. The players that bear the brunt of this, the players that had the most to lose by protesting on the bubble of the roster, their average career is very short and they don't have guaranteed contracts. And this is their time to cash in, to set them up and their families for life. And the NFL exploits them to a great degree. So, anyway, that's just something I wanted to make sure people understand.
Yeah, it's all part of the picture of understanding why we can't divorce politics from sports.
Yes.
That it's absolutely baked into it. And when you hear your neighbor or your father-in-law say something like, well, I don't like politics and sports, just remember that what they're saying is that they don't like a certain kind of politics with sports, because there are tons of politics in sports that they're perfectly fine with.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.